On the evening of December 29th, 1977, a woman in Sacramento came home from running errands. She unlocked her car, walked up her driveway, reached for her front door. It was already open. Inside, her husband was dead on the kitchen floor. He had been shot 3 times. The killer had walked into the house, killed him, and walked out without taking a single thing. Police would later determine the front door had been unlocked all day. The man who killed her husband had walked through the entire neighborhood that afternoon. He had tried dozens of doors before this one. Every locked door he walked away from. Every unlocked door he opened. He believed God was telling him who he was allowed to kill. This is the story of Richard Trenton Chase.
Richard Chase was born in Sacramento in 1950. By the age of 10, he was already showing the 3 signs that criminal psychologists call the warning triad: bedwetting, fire setting, and cruelty to animals. He had all 3. His father was abusive. His mother was paranoid and unstable. By the time Richard was a teenager, his home life had collapsed completely. He began catching small animals in his neighborhood and killing them. He set fires in empty fields. He hit his mother during arguments. He told classmates that something was wrong with his body, that his blood was disappearing, that his organs were moving, that his heart had stopped beating. Nobody took him seriously. By the time he was 16, he had been suspended from school multiple times. He was using marijuana, LSD, and alcohol heavily. He was failing every class. He had no friends. The people who knew him said the same thing later, in interviews, in court documents, in police reports. They said, "We always knew something was wrong with him."
In his early 20s, Richard's mind broke completely. He was hospitalized for the first time after a disturbing incident involving animal blood. He told the doctors his heart had shrunk and that fresh blood was the only thing keeping him alive. He said his bones were turning to powder. He said his stomach had reversed itself inside his body. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was placed in a psychiatric institution. Doctors put him on heavy antipsychotic medication. The hallucinations stopped. He began functioning again. He could hold conversations. He could feed himself. He could sleep. For the first time since childhood, Richard Chase was stable. The doctors recommended he remain in long-term care. His mother disagreed.
In 1976, Richard's mother used her legal authority to have him released from the psychiatric facility. She believed the medication was poisoning him. She believed the doctors were lying. He moved him into his own apartment in Sacramento, told him to stop taking his pills, and left him alone. Within weeks, the delusions returned. Richard began catching animals again. Cats, dogs, rabbits. He killed them, drank their blood, ate their organs raw. He believed he could absorb their life force. He believed it was the only thing keeping him alive. His neighbors heard him screaming at night. They saw him walking the streets covered in blood. They saw him standing in his window, naked, watching them. They called the police. The police came. They spoke to Richard. He told them he was fine. They left. In August 1977, he was arrested in Nevada. He had been found near a truck wearing only sneakers and covered in cow blood. He told officers the cow had attacked him. They took him to a hospital. The hospital released him after a brief evaluation.
he returned to Sacramento. He bought a handgun. He began walking through neighborhoods, trying doorknobs. Every person who could have stopped Richard Chase had already stopped trying.
The first killing happened on December 29th, 1977. Ambrose Griffin, a 51-year-old engineer, was unloading groceries from his car when Richard drove past and shot him from the window. It was a random act. Ambrose did nothing. He was simply outside. 3 weeks later, Richard tried to enter another home. The door was locked. He walked away. He tried another house on the same street. Locked. He walked away. The third house belonged to Teresa Wallen. She was 22 years old and 3 months pregnant. Her front door was unlocked. What he did inside that house cannot be described on this channel. The details were used in court. They appear in police records. They have remained classified in their full form because of how disturbing investigators found them. 2 days later, he killed 4 more people in a single house: a woman, 2 of her family members, and a friend who had stopped by. 6 victims, 3 crime scenes, all within 4 weeks, all behind unlocked doors. The pattern was the same every time. He walked through neighborhoods. He tried doors. If a door was locked, he believed God was telling him this was not a household he was allowed to enter. He walked away. He moved to the next house, the next street, the next neighborhood. He told investigators later that dozens of families in Sacramento had been spared without ever knowing it, simply because they had locked their doors that day.
He was not caught because he made one mistake. He was caught because he barely tried to hide. A woman who had known Richard in high school saw him in a grocery store the day after the second crime scene. He was disheveled, covered in dried blood, talking to himself. She recognized him. She called the police. When officers arrived at his apartment, they found his car parked outside, splattered with blood. Inside the apartment, they found weapons, organs in his refrigerator, blood-soaked clothing, and a calendar with the words "Today" written on the dates of 2 future killings he had been planning. He was arrested without resistance. A receipt found at one of the crime scenes matched a transaction from his bank account. A bloody shoe print matched a sneaker found in his closet. The handgun used in all 6 killings was on his bedside table. He had not tried to hide any of it. He was 28 years old.
The Richard Chase case is not famous because of how many people he killed. 6 is a small number compared to other serial killers from that era. It is remembered because of how visible he was. Every person who came into contact with Richard Chase in the years before the killings knew something was deeply wrong with him. His teachers knew, his neighbors knew, his doctors knew, the police who responded to calls about him knew, the hospital that released him in Nevada knew. His own mother, the person who removed him from the psychiatric care that was keeping him stable, knew. This case is studied in criminology courses around the world for one specific reason. It is the clearest documented example of a killing that everyone saw coming. Not in hindsight, in real time, while it was happening. The system did not fail Richard Chase because it could not see him. The system failed because everyone who saw him decided he was someone else's problem.
Richard Chase was sentenced to death in 1979. He was sent to San Quentin State Prison, where he spent his days hoarding the antidepressants prison doctors prescribed him. On December 26, 1980, almost exactly 3 years after he killed his first victim, a guard found him dead in his cell. He had been hoarding his prescribed medication for weeks. He used it to end his life. He left no note. He was 30 years old. The doors he tried that month in 1977 are still standing. The houses are still there. The neighborhoods look almost exactly the same. Most of the families who locked their doors that day never knew what they had avoided.